Steven Seagal built his image as the ultimate tough guy. But while fans saw him as a hero on screen, those who worked with him saw something else entirely. His off-screen reputation is so controversial that one respected martial artist challenged him to a real fight. Another legendary comedian made a shocking confession about who he truly is behind closed doors. And one Oscar winner openly called him out for inappropriate behavior. These stars don't just dislike Steven Seagal, they want nothing to do with him. The reasons go deeper than ego, and the damage Seagal has left behind still lingers in ways most people have never heard. Steven Seagal's controversial reputation. Most fans don't realize that before Steven Seagal rose to fame, he had already earned the rare distinction of becoming one of the first non-Japanese people to run an Aikido dojo in Japan. Seagal was a 7th Dan black belt in Aikido and was undeniably skilled in the art's fluid and precise style. He wasn't just practicing it, he was teaching it in its homeland, commanding respect in a place notoriously difficult for outsiders to break into. And so, when he eventually made his acting debut in 1988's Above the Law, it was clear that Hollywood had found something different. Seagal didn't move like the typical action star. His combat was cold, efficient, and devastatingly controlled, and the audience was captivated. But while his on-screen image portrayed a disciplined protector of justice, the reality off-screen told a far more complicated and troubling story. As Seagal's fame rose, so did the stories of how difficult he was to work with. Co-stars, stunt coordinators, and even directors began to speak out. He was accused of bullying cast and crew, disrespecting women on set, and slowing down productions with constant script changes that usually served no one but himself. Industry professionals complained that he would frequently rewrite lines to inflate his role or avoid vulnerability, making it harder for stories to flow or for fellow actors to shine. Things got even worse for Seagal's reputation from the early 1990s into the late 2010s. Multiple women, including actresses, assistants, and extras, publicly accused Seagal of inappropriate behavior. The accusations painted a disturbing picture, and among the accusers were well-known names like Jenny McCarthy and Portia de Rossi, who said Seagal used his status and power to intimidate and manipulate. While Seagal has denied all allegations, the volume and consistency of the accounts left a lasting stain on his public image. Seagal has also faced backlash over the statements he's made over the years. He once claimed deep connections to the Central Intelligence Agency, hinted at covert operations, and suggested that his martial arts achievements went far beyond what the record showed. He claimed to have trained military forces, worked undercover, and operated in dangerous global missions. But when questioned, none of these claims could ever be verified. Some viewed it as delusion, others as intentional myth-building. But either way, it further separated Seagal, the man from Seagal, the action hero. For some martial artists and stunt performers, these unverified claims weren't just annoying, they were deeply disrespectful. One of the first to publicly express his frustration was Bob Wall, a respected martial artist in his own right who had trained and acted alongside Bruce Lee. And when it came to Seagal, Bob Wall didn't mince words. Bob Wall. To most martial arts fans, Bob Wall is more than just a side character in Bruce Lee's movies. He's a legend in his own right. Wall wasn't just an actor who dabbled in martial arts to land film roles. He was the real deal, a respected black belt, a fierce competitor, and someone who had earned his place alongside the greats. He trained with the best co-founded martial arts schools and, most famously, played the villain O'Hara opposite Bruce Lee in the iconic 1973 film Enter the Dragon. But for all his experience and history in the martial arts world, Bob Wall was also known for his blunt honesty. He didn't tolerate nonsense, especially not from people he felt disrespected, the art, the discipline, or the legacy of those who had come before. So when Steven Seagal began making some statements in interviews, Wall took it personally. In the early 90s, Seagal was riding high on fame and seemed untouchable. he gave a now infamous interview with Black Belt magazine where he allegedly dismissed legends like Chuck Norris, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and even Bruce Lee. He reportedly claimed Bruce Lee couldn't really fight and suggested Chuck Norris was just an actor. Statements like that didn't just ruffle feathers, they crossed a line. To men like Bob Wall, Bruce Lee wasn't just a former co-star. He was a friend and a master who had redefined martial arts in the West. Chuck Norris, meanwhile, had been a longtime training partner and fellow instructor. And so, hearing Seagal reduce these icons to punchlines hit a nerve. Wall didn't respond with more interviews or press statements. Instead, he put together what became known as the Dirty Dozen, a group of elite martial artists, all respected champions in their respective styles. The list included heavy hitters like Benny the Jet, Urquidez, Bill Superfoot, Wallace, Howard Jackson, Gene LeBell, and others. These were men who didn't just talk tough, they had fought in rings, on mats, and in tournaments all over the world. Wall publicly challenged Seagal to face any one of them, or all of them. It wasn't a stunt. Wall made it clear this was about respect. If Seagal wanted to question the abilities of martial artists who had earned their reputations through years of training and competition, then he should back it up where it counted, and that was on the mat. But Seagal never responded, and he never took the challenge. For Wall and many others in the martial arts community, that silence spoke volumes. Wall reportedly said in later interviews that if Bruce were alive, he'd hunt Seagal down himself. That wasn't just colorful language. It was an expression of how deeply Seagal's arrogance and disrespect had cut through the heart of the martial arts world. For Bob, this wasn't just about bruised egos or celebrity gossip. It was about legacy. He had spent his entire life honoring martial arts as both discipline and philosophy. And so, when someone like Seagal came along, who in Wall's eyes used his platform for ego and status, it wasn't just annoying. It was an insult to everything Wall and his peers had built. And while Seagal may have walked away from the challenge untouched, his silence didn't clear his name. For many, the refusal to face those he had insulted said everything they needed to know. But not everyone who clashed with Seagal came from the martial arts world. One actor, known more for his comedic timing and sharp tongue, had a completely different kind of run-in with him. And it happened on set, in front of the cameras, and in front of everyone. John Leguizamo. By the time Executive Decision began filming in the mid-1990s, Steven Seagal's reputation in Hollywood was already starting to sour. But not everyone on set was prepared for the kind of ego that would walk through the door. Actor John Leguizamo, known for his sharp wit, high-energy performances, and total fearlessness, wasn't intimidated by Seagal's larger-than-life image. He had worked with intense personalities before, but what happened between them would become one of the most talked-about behind-the-scenes stories in action movie history. The controversial incident took place during rehearsals. According to Leguizamo, it started the moment Seagal entered the room. There were no introductions or friendly greetings. Instead, Seagal walked in and told the cast and crew, "I'm in command. What I say is law." For a split second, there was silence. Then Leguizamo laughed. He thought it was a joke or some over-the-top method acting thing. However, nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. According to Leguizamo, the laughter didn't sit well. Within seconds, Seagal turned, marched over to him, and things immediately got physical. It was a moment that revealed everything Leguizamo and many others would later come to feel about Seagal. He wasn't just difficult, he was able to cross boundaries. And not in the way you'd admire from a martial arts master or a Hollywood action star. This was the kind of behavior that crossed lines, both personal and professional. Leguizamo didn't press charges, and he didn't fight back either, but he never forgot it. Years later, he spoke about the incident repeatedly in interviews, each time confirming the same details. And in his 2010 Broadway one-man show, Ghetto Clown, he mocked Seagal openly, recreating the scene, imitating his voice, and making it crystal clear that his opinion of Seagal hadn't softened with time. He even referred to Seagal as a horrible human being and described him as humorless, insecure, and obsessed with power. For Leguizamo, who came from the world of theater and improvisation, Seagal represented everything wrong with celebrity ego. Leguizamo viewed him as a man who took himself so seriously he couldn't handle the slightest bit of laughter, so much so that he resorted to physical confrontation during a rehearsal. What's more telling is that Leguizamo wasn't even Seagal's co-star in Executive Decision for very long. Seagal's character dies early in the movie, which was widely viewed as both a surprise and, by some, an unofficial commentary on how much or how little the filmmakers wanted to deal with him. Still, in that short amount of time, Seagal managed to leave a lasting mark on Leguizamo, and not in a good way. It's worth noting that Leguizamo isn't known for picking public fights or throwing out cheap shots. When he's criticized people in the industry, it's usually been after long reflection, and usually for a reason. In Seagal's case, the aggression was personal, unprovoked, and unforgettable. What makes this story even more disturbing is how consistent it is with other accounts from across the film industry, which paints a much larger portrait of a man who burned bridges faster than he could build them. And while Leguizamo handled it with humor and performance, not everyone took Seagal's behavior as a joke. Some, like a particular Oscar-winning actress with a strong background in physical roles, made it clear they weren't buying into his self-made myth at all. Charlize Theron. Charlize Theron isn't the kind of actress who minces words, especially when it comes to calling out bad behavior in Hollywood. With an Oscar under her belt and a career built on both dramatic depth and gritty physical roles, Theron has carved out a reputation for being brutally honest. So when she spoke about Steven Seagal during an interview, it didn't sound like gossip. It sounded like a woman who had done her homework and wasn't afraid of the backlash. During a press junket, while promoting one of her action films and discussing the rigorous martial arts training she had undergone for the role, Theron spoke proudly of learning techniques, choreographing realistic fights, and working with real martial artists. However, the conversation turned almost casually to Steven Seagal, and Theron didn't hold back. She said, "He's overweight and he barely fights. Look it up. It's ridiculous. He's just shoving people in the face." She went out to admit that she had no problem whatsoever speaking about Seagal negatively because he was not nice to women. And those words ricocheted across the internet. It wasn't just a jab, it was a direct shot at both Seagal's martial arts credibility and his off-screen behavior, particularly toward women. Theron, who has spoken candidly about her own negative experiences in Hollywood, wasn't having it. She called Seagal's fighting style fake. She said he was overweight and ineffective in real combat. And more than that, she condemned how he's treated women over the years, a claim that many others in the industry have tried to tiptoe around. This wasn't coming from a co-star with a personal grudge. Theron has actually never worked with Seagal. She wasn't speaking from first-hand experience on set. Instead, she was reflecting on what had become a painfully open secret in Hollywood. Steven Seagal's reputation for mistreating women spans decades, with multiple women coming forward over the years with disturbing allegations about his conduct. And while Seagal has denied all claims, the stories follow a consistent pattern that Theron clearly wasn't willing to ignore or excuse. What made her comments especially cutting was the contrast between Seagal's cinematic image and the reality Theron was pointing out. He built his fame playing elite operatives and martial arts masters. But Theron, an actress who had undergone extensive hand-to-hand training for roles in films like Atomic Blonde and The Old Guard, was openly mocking his skills, and doing so with the full confidence of someone who had trained just as hard, if not harder, than most men in the business. And unlike others who had clashed with Seagal behind closed doors, Theron did it on camera, with full intention. She didn't fear retaliation or hedge her words, and she certainly didn't apologize afterward. But she's not the only one from outside the martial arts world who has seen through the myth of Steven Seagal. Another actor, better known for his dry comedy and quiet intensity than action, had his own reasons for distrusting everything Seagal stood for. And when he decided to transform himself into a believable fighter, he used Seagal as a cautionary tale. Bob Odenkirk. In the long history of Saturday Night Live, there have been awkward hosts. There have been difficult guests, but only one person has earned the notorious title of being so bad and so insufferable that he was banned from ever coming back. That person was Steven Seagal, and Bob Odenkirk, one of the show's lead writers at the time, was there to witness the disaster unfold in real time. In 1991, while Seagal was still riding high from the success of films like Hard to Kill and Marked for Death, his tough guy persona was everywhere. But on Saturday Night Live, that energy clashed hard with the show's signature tone of satire, self-deprecation, and chaos. And for a writer like Bob Odenkirk, who helped shape sketches for the likes of Chris Farley, Adam Sandler, and Phil Hartman, Seagal's ego wasn't just a hurdle. It was a wrecking ball. The problem started in the writer's room. According to Odenkirk and multiple cast members, Seagal flat out refused to make fun of himself. Any sketch that poked fun at his action movie persona, his voice, or even his look was immediately rejected. Instead, Seagal demanded that the writers craft scenes where he would look strong, dominant, and always in control, essentially turning Saturday Night Live into one of his own movies. The most infamous example involved the popular recurring characters Hans and Franz, two over-the-top Austrian bodybuilders played by Dana Carvey and Kevin Nealon. The sketch was built around parodying muscle-bound gym culture, complete with thick accents and foam-padded abs. The idea was to have Seagal appear alongside them in a scene that lightly poked fun at his own macho image. But Seagal didn't want parody. He wanted dominance. Instead of playing along, Seagal demanded that the sketch end with him exerting physical dominance over Hans and Franz to prove his strength. He wanted the sketch rewritten so he could literally overpower them on stage. However, the writers, including Odenkirk, pushed back because that wasn't the point. Saturday Night Live was about self-awareness, not power fantasies. But Seagal didn't care. As Odenkirk later put it, Seagal wanted to rewrite every sketch to make himself the hero. And when he didn't get his way, he made things difficult for everyone on set. He was reportedly condescending, dismissive, and completely humorless. Cast members said he didn't seem to understand the jokes, or worse, didn't think they were funny unless they made him look good. By the time the episode aired, the tension was obvious. The sketches felt flat, the timing was off, and Seagal looked uncomfortable the entire time. Behind the scenes, the producers noticed, and, after the show wrapped, Lorne Michaels, the longtime Saturday Night Live producer, made a rare and pointed decision. Steven Seagal was banned. Permanently. In later years, when cast members were asked about the worst hosts in Saturday Night Live history, Seagal's name came up every single time. Some called him a nightmare. Others pointed out that he didn't cooperate or respect the format. And Bob Odenkirk, the man trying to write funny material for him, simply said he was the worst. Seagal didn't just ruin that episode. He reportedly ruined the relationship with everyone in the building. And unlike other celebrities who return to make amends or laugh at themselves years later, Seagal never came back. And unsurprisingly, he never took responsibility for how badly it went. But Seagal's problems didn't stop at comedy writers and sketch shows. Even in the world of gritty street-level action and real-life chaos, his ego reportedly managed to push people the wrong way. One of them was a rapper-turned-actor, DMX, who worked with Seagal in a film, only to leave the set with a grudge that followed him for years. DMX. In 2001, when Exit Wounds hit theaters, it was marketed as a gritty, high-octane action flick pairing two unlikely leads, martial arts icon Steven Seagal and hip-hop legend DMX. On paper, the film looked like a bold crossover move. Seagal, the veteran action hero trying to reinvent himself, and DMX, the rough-edged rapper stepping deeper into Hollywood. However, what happened off-screen painted a very different picture. DMX wasn't new to intensity. He had grown up in the streets, battled addiction, served jail time, and built a rap career fueled by raw emotion and painful truth. He was passionate and painfully authentic, and from the moment filming began, there was friction between him and Seagal. According to those who worked on the set, Seagal showed up with the same self-important attitude that had already alienated directors, actors, and entire production teams in the past. He reportedly gave notes no one asked for, rewrote scenes to favor himself, and made little effort to connect with the cast, including DMX. Unsurprisingly, DMX saw right through it. In later interviews, he didn't hold back when asked about working with Seagal. He referred to him bluntly as someone with an inflated ego, fake hair, and zero self-awareness. The exact words he used couldn't be repeated on daytime television, but the sentiment was clear. He thought Seagal was a joke. DMX had built his career on authenticity, on keeping it real, no matter the cost. And to him, Seagal embodied the exact opposite. The bravado and the exaggerated martial arts mystique all seemed like an act to DMX, and not a convincing one. Still, the two managed to complete exit wounds, and the film surprisingly performed well at the box office. But the behind-the-scenes tension never really went away. For DMX, it was a job, nothing more, and that likely explains what happened next. A few years later, DMX appeared in another film with Seagal, 2005's Today You Die. So why would DMX, who clearly had no respect for the man, come back to work with him again? The answer seems simple: money. DMX was open about his financial struggles throughout his life. He had legal fees, personal debts, and a lifestyle that constantly needed funding. Today You Die wasn't a passion project, it was a paycheck. And DMX treated it exactly like that. There was no friendship or partnership between them. Instead, they were just two men on opposite ends, sharing screen time for reasons that had nothing to do with chemistry. But while DMX's clashes with Seagal were built on clashing personalities, one of Seagal's most bitter feuds came from someone within his own cinematic world, a fellow martial artist and action icon. However, this man didn't just dislike Steven Seagal, he had a personal score to settle. And unlike others, he was ready to take it outside. Jean-Claude Van Damme. In the golden era of 80s and 90s action cinema, there were two names that ruled the martial arts box office: Steven Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme. Both had their own signature styles. Seagal with his Aikido-based, bone-breaking calm, and Van Damme with his high-flying splits and Muay Thai precision. They rarely shared the screen, but in the real world, a confrontation between them almost happened. And if Van Damme had his way, it would have gone down in front of the whole world. According to multiple reports, including from Sylvester Stallone himself, there was once serious talk of staging $1 million fight between Seagal and Van Damme in Las Vegas. This would have been the kind of spectacle that could have redefined both of their careers, or at least settled one of Hollywood's longest-running feuds. However, the fight never happened. Why? Because, allegedly, Seagal backed out. Van Damme had made no secret of his issues with Seagal. Over the years, he had heard the insults. Seagal publicly dismissed him in interviews, questioning his credentials and mocking his fighting style. Seagal would often suggest that Van Damme was just a gymnast, not a real fighter. But Van Damme, who trained in Shotokan karate and kickboxing from a young age and had competed in actual tournaments, wasn't going to let those comments slide forever. The breaking point came at a party at Sylvester Stallone's house in the 90s. It was a gathering of Hollywood's action elite, like Stallone, Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, and both Seagal and Van Damme, under the same roof. What started as casual conversation quickly turned tense. According to Stallone, Van Damme confronted Seagal, calling him out for the years of disrespect and asking him to settle things right then and there. However, Seagal walked away. Not just once, but twice. Van Damme reportedly followed him outside, still pressing for a confrontation, but Seagal declined again. Those who witnessed it said Seagal looked uncomfortable and refused to engage, even as Van Damme stood there, ready. For Van Damme, the night was personal. It wasn't about money, movies, or ego. It was about respect, and in his eyes, Seagal had disrespected him, his training, and the martial arts world too many times. And while the fight never took place in Vegas, the fallout was just as loud. The story spread quickly, another chapter in the growing legend of Seagal's bravado falling apart under pressure. Van Damme, meanwhile, didn't hold a grudge. He moved on, continued making films, and never shied away from revisiting the incident when asked. In every version of the story, the outcome is the same. He was ready to fight, and Seagal wasn't. But not every critic of Steven Seagal came from inside the world of action cinema or martial arts. Some came from the world of stand-up comedy, people who watched Seagal's career, persona, and public appearances with growing disbelief. One of them, a comedian known for saying exactly what others are thinking, took that disbelief and turned it into something else entirely. Tom Segura. Steven Seagal's reputation has taken hits from martial artists, action stars, rappers, and respected actors. But no one has turned that reputation into high-level comedy quite like Tom Segura. With a sharp tongue, deadpan delivery, and no filter, Segura has made a side career out of exposing the absurdity of Seagal's myth, and audiences can't get enough of it. Segura's first major blow came in his breakout stand-up special, Completely Normal, where he gave a brutally hilarious breakdown of everything that made Seagal such a perfect target. The bizarre, whispery voice, the strange way he moves in action scenes, and the almost delusional self-image he's tried to project over the years. Segura mocked Seagal's habit of walking into scenes as if he's gliding, arms stiff, face expressionless, while every opponent around him flails like a cartoon character. He pointed out how Seagal somehow plays the same character in every movie regardless of whether the script makes any sense. But where Segura really crossed the line was when he pointed out how Seagal speaks like he's narrating a meditation app, even while threatening people. What separated Segura's takedown from just another roast was how deeply researched and accurate it felt. He wasn't just taking easy shots. He knew the stories, the rumors, and the behind-the-scenes behavior. And he brought it all together with the timing of a veteran comic and the precision of a journalist. In his follow-up Netflix series, Segura kept the mockery alive. He created full parody sketches of Seagal, portraying him as a bloated, washed-up action star waddling through fight scenes and still demanding to be seen as a martial arts god. Segura wore a slicked-back wig and black jacket, and even mimicked Seagal's slow, stilted movements, while fighting actors half his size. One segment parodied Seagal's long-standing claim of being a spiritual warrior, mocking how he introduces himself as a peace-loving mystic while simultaneously breaking people's arms and issuing threats in a monotone voice. But it wasn't just for laughs. In interviews, Segura revealed something that made the comedy even more cutting. He noted that stunt coordinators and actors on real Hollywood sets openly make fun of Seagal behind the scenes. According to Segura, many in the industry describe him as delusional, impossible to work with, and completely out of touch with reality. They joke about how Seagal often rewrites action scenes so he never loses a fight, even when it breaks the story. It's rare for an entire industry to unite in ridicule around one person, but Segura captured that energy and delivered it with ruthless precision. Over the years, Seagal's enemies have come from every corner of the entertainment world. Some were physically ready to take him down. Others were emotionally scarred by his arrogance. And a few, like Tom Segura, simply let the absurdity speak for itself. What do you think about Steven Seagal's offset behavior? Drop your answers in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.